So when I was growing up, I had an uncle named Brad. I've talked about him in previous videos, and he was one of my biggest influences growing up. I've always said that there wouldn't be a Tennessee Brando channel if he was still alive, because he could absolutely blow me out of the water. He could out-debate me any day of the week. He could out-talk me any day of the week. I've never met anybody that was sharper and had a quicker wit than him and could come back so fast, and not just with wit or sarcasm, but with facts and evidence right in front of your face. It was always, I just used to go over to his house just to soak it all in. And he had I started to say he had a sense of humor, but really he didn't. He was one of those people who was unintentionally funny. His anger and frustration at the world would just have me laughing, because he would say something in a dead serious way, and I would burst out laughing. And a lot of times, like, what are you laughing at? And I'm like, well, it's just the way you delivered it was so priceless. And one thing he used to say that would really crack me up, anytime he heard a politician say something really stupid, he would go, you know what they ought to do? They ought to take his picture and put it in the dictionary next to the word stupid, so that when people looks it up and they read the definition of stupid, they know exactly what stupid looks like. And I would just hit the floor laughing. And I'm going to borrow from him here for a minute and say that if there was a book of phrases out there and you looked up what certain phrases meant, they should definitely put JD Vance's face right next to the phrase kissing the ring, because that's what he's doing right here.
There's an open question of who Donald Trump will pick to be his vice presidential candidate. We just heard him talking about Marco Rubio. You're hosting a fundraiser with him in your home state of Ohio later this month. I know you say that you two haven't discussed the vice presidency directly, but you said you'd certainly be open to it if he did offer it to you. Considering that, does it give you any pause whatsoever about taking that job when you see how he treated his last vice president?
Well, Kaitlyn, first of all, again, I haven't talked to Donald Trump about becoming vice president. I think it's important to support President Trump as Republicans, because I think he was a good president, and I think that he made the country more prosperous, and I think he made the world more peaceful. What gives me pause, Kaitlyn, is another 4 years of Biden's administration where he's opened the borders and where you have effectively a conflict, a major world conflict in nearly every continent in the world.
But my question was not about President Biden. It's about President Trump.
Well, look, it's fundamentally about President Biden, because if you're comparing the two records of these presidents and asking, who do I want to be president? It's very clearly that I want Donald Trump to be president. And I understand that there are a lot of things that people like you disagree that he did, but I think fundamentally he was a good president. He accomplished a lot for the country. And the question fundamentally for our country is, do we want 4 more years of Joe Biden, or do we want 4 more years of the peace and prosperity of Donald Trump? That, to me, is an easy question.
I absolutely want 4 more years of Joe Biden. I feel like we're way better off today than we were under Donald Trump. And anyone who says those was years of peace and prosperity, they have to be in an alternate reality. I know I say that a lot, but it's true. Donald Trump did not follow through with the promises he made. And ever since he lost the election, he's not been able to accept it, and therefore he's made a mockery out of our elections. He's made a mockery out of our courts. He's made a mockery out of our legal system, our justice system. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has been rolling up his sleeves, going to work for the American people, and the biggest blemish on Joe Biden's presidency is nothing he's done. It's Donald Trump just running off at the mouth every second that he could do it better if he was there. He didn't have a clue what to do while he was there. He's not going to have a clue again the second time. But JD Vance seems to be in this alternate reality of, if we make him president again, everything will just remarkably get better on day one. It's absolutely ridiculous. And what's even more ridiculous is that when he's asked about Trump's treatment of Mike Pence, this was his response. Again, kissing the ring.
The last time I checked, President Biden wasn't approving of the chance to hang his vice president, and did not call his vice president when their life was in danger on Capitol Hill, something that Mike Pence himself has testified to. So my question is, does it give you any pause to be his vice president, given how he has treated Mike Pence?
Kaitlyn, I'm extremely skeptical that Mike Pence's life was ever in danger. I think politics people like to really exaggerate things from time to time.
I know
a lot of folks in the Democratic Party.
Senator.
A lot of folks in the Democratic Party, Kaitlyn, act as if January the 6th was the scariest moment of their lives. I think, look, January 6th was a bad day. It was a riot. But the idea that Donald Trump endangered anyone's lives when he told them to protest peacefully, it's just absurd. And the entire legal basis of this prosecution of Donald Trump
but they
from
were
Jack
chanting
Smith,
that they wanted to hang him.
Look, Kaitlyn, did a few people say some bad things? Sure, but do we blame Donald Trump for every bad thing that's ever been said by a participant in American democracy? I think that's an absurd standard. And look, Kaitlyn, I know you're worried, and I think justifiably so. About
this isn't about me,
threats
Senator.
to
I'm
American.
asking questions about you and how you
Look,
would feel about this.
I'm trying to answer the question. I appreciate if you let me. We know that there are threats to American democracy. I think the biggest threat to American democracy, Kaitlyn, is that the Biden administration is trying to prevent Donald Trump from campaigning and taking his case to the American people, even as they hide their own candidate.
That's presiding over that case. The Biden administration is not preventing Donald Trump from campaigning. He just did two campaign events tonight.
Folks, I got to be honest with you. That clip for me was hard to watch, because it is so insane to me that someone can sit there and defend what happened on January 6th and try to downplay it like that. We all just get all emotional over that. We just want to talk about it all the time. No, what we want is to see people held accountable for it. We don't ever want to see anything remotely close to that ever happening again in this country. And there were people chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." You won't see him zero in, though. You won't see him focus on that. He can't bring himself to do it. He has to downplay it at all turns. All the bad that was done, he has to downplay that and act like we're just getting worked up over nothing, that it wasn't that big of a deal. There was a few people doing something bad. No, there was a whole lot of people doing something bad. We have it right on video. There were people there that witnessed it. We're not delusional. We're not going to let you gaslight us into thinking that nothing happened on that day. And now he would love to be, I'm sure he would love to be Trump's VP. And just know that if you get in there with him and you rock that boat, then you're going to be the next Judas Iscariot, and he's going to turn on you just as fast as he did Mike Pence. It's really crazy, but it gets crazier, and it always will with these people. JD Vance gets caught like a deer in headlights on this next clip, and I love Kaitlyn for catching him in this crap. Watch this.
But you can't police people for being anti-Israel or pro-Israel. You can police people for violating the law, and we have seen some of that with some of these protests.
Okay, so you agree that people who break in and vandalize a building should be prosecuted?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just checking because you did help raise money for people who did so on January 6th, which was, impeding an official proceeding, breaking into a building that they weren't allowed to be in, and vandalizing the Capitol.
Well, Kaitlyn, I know that this is the obsession of the national media to talk about what happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago on January the 6th.
It's not an obsession. I'm just seeing if it's a double standard.
No, let me answer the question, Kaitlyn. I mean, look, here's been my basic argument about January the 6th. If you beat up a cop, of course you deserve to go to prison. If you violated the law, you should suffer the consequences. But there are people who protested on January the 6th who have had the complete weight of the Justice Department thrown at them when, at worst, they're accused of misdemeanors. Now, again, there are people who are accused of worse offenses, and that's a problem. But you can't have Black Lives Matter protesters who rioted and vandalized go free when you have people who were actually peacefully protesting on January the 6th who have the book thrown at them. That's the double standard that I'm most worried about.
Yeah, I don't think there's an obsession with January 6th, but it is a legitimate question. And given what you just said there, and as Trump is getting closer to, as he's a presumptive Republican nominee, he has said he would pardon, he's considered a blanket pardon for everyone on January 6th. Are you saying that shouldn't happen? People who beat up cops should be excluded from that?
Well, I think what President Trump has said, and of course he can speak for himself, but I pay pretty close attention to what he says. And I think what the president has said is that people who have this double standard applied to them should be pardoned. And
going back to my Uncle Brad for a minute, we used to be over at his house sitting around watching the news, and there would be a politician on TV, and Brad would predict what he was going to say before he said it. He'd lean in and go, "Watch this. He's fixing to say this. Well, hold on. Watch. He's getting there. He's going to do it. Watch him. I told you he would say it." And I just pictured sitting on Brad's couch watching this clip with him and him leaning into me and going, "He's about to bring up Black Lives Matter. Just wait. Just wait for it. He's going to do that," because that's what they always do. That's the one place they're going to go and point to. And every time they do, I'm going to point this out. It's not a double standard because those were apples and oranges. The protest that happened in 2020 was the voice of the unheard. That's what that was. I'm not condoning the violence that happened. I'm just simply saying a protest is the voice of the unheard. For years, Black people had tried to tell us what was going on in their communities, and we weren't listening. We weren't doing anything to fix it or make it better. And they started seeing people die on national TV with a knee in their neck And they said enough is enough, and they took to the streets. I'm not condoning the violence, but the protest was the voice of the unheard. What happened on January 6th was not a protest, was not a voice of the unheard. It was people who could not accept the results of an election that they lost. And they got brainwashed into believing that the election was stolen from them by Donald Trump. So when JD Vance wants to sit and say that they were just peacefully protesting and you can't blame Donald Trump with it, yeah, you absolutely can, because that event would not have happened had Donald Trump conceded and went on home. We would have never been in that boat. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, folks. I never thought about January 6th before 2021. I knew they certified the election results at some point in January, but I'm being brutally blunt. As much to politics as me and my uncle talked, that was never a holiday to us. That was never a day we even thought about. When an election happened, it was pretty much over, with the exception of Bush and Gore back in the day. They had a quarrel over that one for a minute. But every other election in my lifetime has been, okay, this person won, this person lost, this person came out and gave a victory speech, this person came out and congratulated the other one and said, I'll try again next time, and we all went home. January 6th wasn't a holiday, and we're not obsessed with it. But it's going to be talked about from now on because Donald Trump pushed a bunch of bullshit and a bunch of conspiracy theories till he got everyone worked up and got them there. And again, when he got those people there believing those lies, you got to put it into context. He had people there that he had duped into thinking they should be there. There was no reason for them to be there, but he had them duped into thinking they should. And then he's saying to them, you have to fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country. Now, some people says, oh, but he did say to peacefully protest. That ain't exactly what he meant. He was saying it to someone who was all worked up and ready to fight like hell. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence. They were worked into a frenzy. And he says, you got to fight like hell. Now, you could sit here and debate all day long, which angle did he mean it from? It's all in who he said it to. If you have somebody, I've played a lot of dive bars as a musician in my lifetime, and an old friend of mine used to always tell me the best way to cool situations down, and that was don't feed into it. Don't feed into it. Just try to cool this one down and get this one out the door, because we don't want to see a fight happen. So if someone, let's say someone busted in the bar and started screaming at somebody going, I know you slept with my wife, the best thing to do is to try to cool that situation down, instead of saying, well, let me tell you something, buddy. Now, you just need to take this outside, but if you don't fight like hell, she's going to cheat on you again. If you say that to someone in that mindset, they're going to get madder, and they're going to all hell's going to break loose. That's what happened. So to all the people that sits back and says, well, he said peacefully. He said go down there and let's just peacefully protest. Yeah, but he had a bunch of worked off, pissed off people there for a bunch of bullshit that wasn't true. They all got worked up over something that wasn't true, and they believed they were there for a fight. They were on social media before saying what they were going to do. They were telling everybody exactly what they were going to do, and then when they did it, and it didn't go like they planned, then they began trying to change it and shift the blame, and they've been trying to downplay it ever since. We're not obsessed with it. What we want to see is justice served. What we want to see is people who, when we look at that, here's what we see. We see people that was trying to take away our vote. Now, I know they felt the same way, but they were duped. The evidence is on our side. I mean, I don't know how much plainer it could be. You know, I did not like it when George W. Bush became president. I was really, really pissed. But you know what my Uncle Brad said to me? This is some bullshit. This is some real bullshit. We said that for a couple of weeks, maybe. And then we put our big boy pants on, and we started thinking about what we were going to do moving forward, because that's what reasonable people do. But again, folks, when we're dealing with Maga, and especially when we're dealing with JD Vance, yeah, you can go ahead and put him in the dictionary too next to the phrase unreasonable people. He'd fit that bill perfectly too.